Jeff, Aiden Hutchinson. And not just Aiden, this entire 2022 draft class. Very reminiscent of 2021, no? Year one, Dan Campbell, they're 3-13-1, but you're going through the season, you're saying, well, you know, Derek Barnes he might turn the corner. Amon-Ra St. Brown surging late. Penei Sewell, excellent down the stretch at right tackle. I believe he was a top 8 right tackle over the last 7, 8, 9 weeks of the year. So, a lot of good things. Aleem McNeil showed flashes. Levi O, before the injury, had flashes. You had hope last year. That didn't pan out. But the point was you were looking across the board and saying, holy hell.
Tons of contributors.
A lot of contributors here from the first draft. You go to the second draft now, and it's Aiden Hutchinson. You get Jameson Williams back. And Jameson Williams still needs to get into his zone, but still will include him in the group. Kirby Joseph. Malcolm Rodriguez. James Houston, who was cut originally, signed to the practice squad, makes his return, and has been a sack machine. Machine since Buffalo.
Sack in every game he's played in. Second in rookies and sacks behind Aiden.
Ridiculous. So you have, to me, you have the GM. I always talk to you about head coach, GM, quarterback. How many of them do you have? If you have 2 out of the 3, you can probably win your division most years. If you have all 3, you're a Super Bowl contender. I think you've got the GM. I think that's a check. You set it in stone. That is done. Do you have the head coach? Do you have the quarterback? I think the head coach right now and the quarterback right now, given the way they've played, the way they've coached over the last 7 games, are really starting to check some boxes here. So I look at this 2022 draft, Jeff, contributing across the board. No misses. Brad Holmes does it again.
Mm-hmm. There's tons of them, too. I mean, you can keep going. Kirby Joseph, James Mitchell, now that TJ's traded away. Like, there's so many. And we talk about how many starters you want per draft, what you expect out of your general manager. Brad Holmes has exceeded that. I mean, you're finding a handful of guys every draft that are starting and or contributing for your defense and offense. And that's all you can ask for. At least for Brad, he's checked all the boxes. I mean, you haven't seen him spent significant money yet. That's the next task for him, which, assuming this offseason, you have the ability to go do that and sign veterans. And now Detroit looks like more of an attractive free agency destination. So I'm excited to see that realm of it. But in terms of the draft and identifying talent, that's what Brad Holmes' strength is. We knew that coming in, coming from L.A., so there was never a doubt, at least in my mind. I know people were aggravated or upset with Brad Holmes early in the season, and we just couldn't wrap our head around it. For a guy who's identified all this talent, now it's crickets. You don't hear people criticizing Brad Holmes. But to Dan Campbell, the narrative for Dan Campbell, too, brought in, and you see his press conferences. Last year, you won 3 games. He cried after his first win. Now looking back, winning 6 of 7, it seems like Dan Campbell's checking those boxes slowly, and more people are buying in, from at least from the fan base, including myself. I mean, I was always bought into Dan, but now you're starting to see it come to light, come to fruition. What the blueprint is to win, you're seeing it. And for Jared Goff, he might not be, your franchise quarterback. In franchise meaning, you have confidence in him to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But at the same time, he's good enough. He's good enough to win your playoff games. He's good enough to win your divisions. He's good enough. He's done it before to reach a Super Bowl. And that's a great thing to have, a great be in a position to have a quarterback like that right now. You'd rather have him over Tannehill. So, again, if you're talking about middle-of-the-pack quarterbacks, Jared Goff this year's played like a top 10 quarterback. Nobody would disagree. He's perfectly fine. His position's safe, at least for right now, until Brad addresses it in the draft. They have 3 of those things. They might not be elite yet, but they check those boxes enough to contend for the playoffs. We have confidence in them to win their division next year. So that means the 3 things we talk about, general manager, head coach, and quarterback, at least Lions fans, and us included, have confidence in what the Lions currently have to go out and do that. Now they got to continue to build this roster out. And look at the assets they have. That's the most exciting part about this. I mean, you draft Aiden Hutchinson. He's a steal. We didn't expect him to be there at 2. The fact that he was, it was a no-brainer. There was a conversation, him or Thibodeau. Aiden was always the pick, and you're seeing it now. And even beyond that, Jameson Williams, you finally get to see Jameson, his first real game, playing significant snaps, gets a touchdown, big, wide-open touchdown against the Vikings. Kirby Joseph, is up there for interceptions among rookies and turnovers. So Kirby, ball hawk, everything we knew him to be. We are excited about that draft pick. So again, that's what your job is as a general manager in a rebuild. Identify talent, go get young guys on rookie contracts that can be contributors for years. And the thing is, and this is what I keep bringing up, this team has a future. These guys, all of their significant players, all of their, I guess you could say franchise players, their pillars of their franchise are under rookie contracts. Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kirby Joseph. You could keep going. These guys are under contract for a couple more years. So they're not going nowhere. And that's the most exciting thing about being a Lions fan right now is the future is as bright as it's been in years. And these players are going to continue to get better. We could be excited about James Houston this year and Aiden Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but these players aren't done developing. They're going to continue to get better. And Jared Goff and Ben Johnson next year, Ben Johnson's second year as an OC, hopefully doesn't get pulled away this offseason. Assuming he doesn't, Jared Goff getting more and more comfortable. He was always the turnover machine, hasn't had a turnover in 6 games. So, again, we talk about the positives of this team. There's plenty to talk about. The future is very, very bright with the Detroit Lions.
I've found Brad Holmes to be such a godsend. And when you talk about confidence in a rebuild, what players, what product, what produce are you getting from the grocery store, right? You want to make a nice omelet? You got to go get some good groceries, right? Some grade A eggs, some peppers, some cheese. Depends what you like on your omelet. But you get where I'm going with this. The fact that he's already drafted this amount of contributors on this team is insane.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't happen this way often. And again, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a third-round pick going into the 2023 NFL Draft. Do you know what that means, Jeff? That means your defense is going to get a facelift, not only through the draft, but in free agency. And at what, $29-30 million, Jared Goff's contract right now looks amazing.
Mm-hmm. And it's only going to continue to look amazing as
better.
Guys get re-upped.
Absolutely.
Like Lamar Jackson, for example.
Kyler Murray got paid. You saw Deshaun Watson get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterbacks are getting paid. And the fact that you have one who has been so responsible and so good these last 7 games. And he was really, really good the first 3 outside of those interceptions. Lions are in a really good position right now. And you want to talk to me about next year and the draft and free agency and what they could do in the regular season next year. Maybe contend, maybe win their division. I don't think that's crazy. I think that is the exact timeline it takes to rebuild and contend with a team in the NFL. What's the timeline, Jeff? We have this conversation how many times in the offseason? It should take you no more than 3 years.
3 years.
To contend or win your division. One or the other. I don't want to hear excuses about time, rebuild, talent. You got to do this, but then you have to do that. No excuses. It's the NFL. It incentivizes bad teams to turn it around like that. So why wait? And suddenly the Lions go from 1-6 talking about what the future looks like to 7-7 talking about the playoffs, along with the Rams pick that you're going to have that'll be in the top 5 hopefully. Oh, and by the way, next year you're probably contending or, dare I say, winning your division. Because the Bears are still going to be bad. The Packers will drop off. The Vikings have won a lot of close games this year that I don't expect them to continuously win. It's just, again, it's like playing the house. Eventually it breaks even. All those balls don't fall your way all the time. The Bills went from winning 13 games to 11 to 10. Why? Well, those one possession games, they just suddenly started losing. Not because they're worse, not because the Bills aren't really good, but because that's the NFL. And sometimes things don't work out for you. And that's okay. That's where you're at with the Lions. The Lions have the brightest future, I could argue, in the NFC North. As much as I like Kevin O'Connell, you know I'm a big fan. An older Vikings team, young at its core with some superstar players, but at the end of the day, what the Lions are building is more sustainable than the Vikings,
Yes.
then the Bears, and then the Packers. And I would have said the same thing at 1-6 because it's still a very young core. And these players, like you mentioned, and that you've been bringing up the last 2 days, they're not going anywhere. They're under contract. All those picks under contract, minimum 4 years.
Yep.
And then all your first-round picks, you got that fifth-year option. You've got time. Oh, and you've got more draft picks going into this upcoming draft. So it'll only extend your window. Yeah. It's looking very good, Jeff.
Yeah, no.
It's looking very good.
You talk about the NFC North. You could argue the NFC, one of the brightest futures, besides a couple contenders right now, and as complete as they are. The Lions, with the assets they have, the rookies they have under contract that are impactful, that are significant. You have 2 first-rounders this year, 2 second-round picks. Who knows what they could find with those, Brad Holmes specifically. But moving forward, this team next year, I cannot wait to see, because in the next couple years, the difference between the Lions and a majority of the teams in the NFC is all of their most important players or their most impactful players will be getting paid like rookies. And they'll be under contract still. And that's the difference. The Minnesota Vikings are going to have to re-up some guys. TJ Hawkinson needs an extension. What are you going to do with TJ? Justin Jefferson is coming down the pipeline. He's going to demand a massive contract. There's things they're going to have to sort out. The Lions still have that offensive line that guys are already paid for. Penei Sewell on a rookie contract. That ain't going nowhere. The defensive line, which is made up of mostly rookies, they aren't going anywhere. So, in Romeo Okwara, who's signed under contract, the biggest thing the Lions have to improve on and fix is that secondary. But you're going to get Tracy Walker back. You're probably going to use one of those first-round picks on a corner, and who knows what they can do in free agency. So, again, the weaknesses on the Detroit Lions, it's fixable with the assets they have coming. So, I cannot wait to see. We talk about, the weak or the flaws within this team. I can't wait to see next year, because a lot of those flaws are going to get addressed, and players are going to get better. So, honestly, one of the brightest futures in the NFC, no question.